All right, Braves fans. Well, in this episode of State of the Braves, we're going to jump into quite a bit. We're going to focus most of this episode on the Braves starting pitching staff. We do have a good bit of Braves news to cover, though. The Braves have been one of the most active teams early on in the offseason now that the Dodgers took care of business against the Yankees. So we'll get into the Braves moves, and we'll look forward to 2025 and what we think the Braves might do regarding the starting rotation in the 2025 season. All right, guys, well, let's get into things. As you know, the offseason has officially started. The Dodgers definitely took care of business against the New York Yankees, and what I thought was going to happen last time with Freddie Freeman. Yes, he does take home the World Series MVP, well earned from Freddie. And look, as Braves fans, let's move on and look towards the 2025 season. So the Braves are already making news. I got a lot of Braves news to share with you guys before we get into the meat of this episode, which will be all about the Braves starting rotation in 2024 and, of course, moving forward into 2025. So the Braves basically they made the first move of the offseason of any MLB team. They send Jorge Soler to the Angels for right-handed pitcher starter Griffin Canning. So this move proves what I already thought was true. The Braves didn't really see a fit for Jorge Soler on the 2025 Braves roster. I'm wondering if the Braves ever really intended to keep Soler long term. That runs against comments that Anthopoulos made when they got Soler. I mean, he kind of made a pretty big deal about, we love Soler, we want him here for a long term. Maybe that was just psychologically letting Soler kind of feel like he was a part of the team. Maybe it's just GM speak, and it's kind of proof that you got to take with a grain of salt whatever a GM is going to say publicly. But all that being said, it's unfortunate that Soler's addition to the 2024 team didn't come with more, firepower. He was brought in for offense, obviously not his defense, and he just really wasn't able to provide a ton. I mean, he had some moments and sometimes when he did contribute, but he certainly didn't have the same impact that he did in 2021. So unfortunately, as much as we love Jorge Soler, he is moving on, and I think this is probably for the best. I mentioned it last episode. This is one thing that I would do, and so I really am glad that the Braves did it. On top of what we saw from Jorge offensively, his defense, which we know already wasn't good. I mean, it's almost like it regressed from 2021. I don't remember him. I mean, I know he wasn't a good fielder in 2021, but I don't really necessarily, it didn't jump off the page to me that he was terrible back then, but he looked pretty bad this time around. So I don't know, he's 3 years older. Maybe it's just that. All that being said, he just, because of his defensive limitations, he just didn't fit on this team. And of course, he can't play DH because Ozuna's got that locked down, and Ronald is coming back to play right field. So beyond Harris and Acuna, this now leaves Jared Kelenic and Ramon Laureano as really the two other internal candidates to play left field for the Braves. I covered a lot of the outfield stuff in my last episode. But I am hoping this move signifies that the Braves may do something bigger on the free agent market or via a trade to find an everyday left fielder. Hopefully, Laureano, I think he serves as a really good fourth outfielder and a guy that, any injury or if Ronald's not ready at the beginning of the year, he's going to be able to step in and play for extended periods of time, but really serves well as a fourth outfielder. But I would love for them to go out and get a bigger difference maker in left field that can obviously play a good defensive left field, but can bring some things offensively as well. So the addition of Griffin Canning provides some additional depth to the back end of the Braves rotation. I'm not sure he's anything more than a fifth starter. He pitched the entire year in the Angels starting rotation last year, but he has around a 5 career ERA and ERA around 5. It was the same last year for him. He's 28 years old, so he's not an old guy. 28, this is probably who he is. Maybe the Braves can unlock a few things bringing him in, and maybe he adjusts some things and he gets a little better than what he has been. The good news with Canning, though, is he made 31 starts last year He seems pretty durable throughout his career, and so just having a guy that can fill up some innings for you at the back end of your rotation, there is value to that. It's not going to light anybody's fire. It's not going to make me super excited. But these types of guys, you need them in your organization. So there is some value to that. Not a ton of value. He is on a cheap contract. He's in the last year of arbitration. He'll likely make around $5 million next year for a starter, a major league starter, making $5 million. That's cheap, right? So he does add value just in terms of depth. If you get him into camp and he's just terrible, or you don't have a spot for him, or you sign a free agent, or there's a trade that's made and suddenly he is expendable, you can let him go, right? I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Or you can trade him because somebody else might need pitching depth. So in terms of, you weren't going to get a ton for Soler probably, but the other thing that this does is all of Soler's money goes to the Angels, which means the Braves are able to clear some money off the books, not just this year, but remember Soler was signed for an additional year as well. So all of that money, the Braves are able to get away from that. And that might be actually the best part of this deal. All right, just today, actually just before I came on, guys, more Braves news came down the pike. The Braves have signed new contracts with both Reynaldo Lopez and Aaron Bummer. Essentially, they're turning their two contracts, which had the last years of their deals were team options. So they turned those into guarantees, but they also shifted around some of the money. Both contracts now will pay out slightly less in the earlier years. And so that's going to basically save the Braves some money in 2025. So now Lopez is signed through 2027 and Bummer through 2026, again, with no player options. So, the Soler move, these two moves, it does clear up more space in terms of money for 2025. Of course, you can look at that in multiple ways, right? There's kind of two different ways of looking at that. Maybe they're just cutting payroll and they're trying to, maybe even get under a CBT threshold. The other way to look at it is maybe they're clearing the decks, readying themselves for potential free agent acquisition or, trade or that sort of thing that might bring in more money. So we don't know. I mean, obviously we're going to have to see how the rest of the offseason plays out, but it's just interesting. The Braves are making moves early on. And again, we know that Anthopoulos likes to do that. And I think a lot of these can just be viewed as he knows monetarily what he has to play with for the rest of the offseason. I also wanted to mention there was an interview or two with Tim Hyers, the new Braves hitting coach. I just wanted to comment on him a little bit more. I think I told you guys, I wasn't all about firing Kevin Seitzer, though I totally understood why. You're bringing in a new voice, and just hearing the early comments from Tim Hyers, I like this guy. I like his addition. The big takeaway from what the comments I've heard him make is, he mentioned 3 foundational keys that he has to hitting, and he said it was game planning, swing decisions, and movements in the batter's box. And I think most Braves fans would agree that none of those things were real strengths of the Braves team. So it's good to hear that these are the things that he really focuses on. And then he kind of made a larger point that if you do these 3 things well, you, as a team, you tend to be fluid to be able to both slug, right, hit for power, and dominate situational hitting as well. And so the situational hitting part is obviously something the Braves need to address, need to improve. And so maybe these 3 things: better game planning, making better swing decisions, which is something I've talked a lot about that this 2024 team was really bad at. And then movements in the batter's box. Again, I think, Matt Olson is one that particularly comes to mind, maybe also Sean Murphy, where getting a little quieter in the batter's box and, straight to the baseball might help them a lot. Hyers also discussed his role in helping the players overcome mental hurdles of a long season. They had many of the same issues that the Braves had with injuries and ineffective play. The Rangers also had that last year when he was with Texas. So hopefully he's bringing in that experience. He's bringing in a fresh voice to these guys, and hopefully he can bring a positive mindset to the Braves. All right, last bit of news that I'll mention, and then we'll get into the rest of this episode on the pitching staff. The betting odds for to open the 2025 season came out, of course, right after the World Series ended, and I don't bet, but it is interesting to look at these numbers. The Braves were third with the third best odds to win the World Series behind the Dodgers and Yankees. I actually think the Braves should be number 2 behind the Dodgers, and of course these things can change and move over time. Shohei Ohtani, I mean, the Dodgers are they're going to be a juggernaut. They're going to be the team that the Braves have to beat in the National League. Ohtani will be pitching next year on top of everything else that we know he's able to do offensively. So I just expect already just with that, the Dodgers are going to be better. And I always expect them to make some kind of big free agent splash in the offseason as well, because they basically have endless amounts of money over there in LA. But the Yankees, in terms of them, they have a very small window. I think they have a very small window to win with this current roster. They're getting older. Judge and Stanton and all those guys are just getting older. And so even if Juan Soto comes back, which I think he is very likely to do, but even if Soto comes back, I just think there's too many things that could go wrong health-wise for this team. Now, I doubted the Yankees going into this season, and they proved me wrong. They were able to stay healthy. They got more pitching than I thought they would, and obviously they made it all the way to the World Series. But I just think the odds are against them to do that again. The Phillies, with these betting odds, sit just behind the Braves in the 4th spot, and I think they actually kind of mirror the Yankees. They're going to be a year older. The Phillies, looking back, it was kind of an opposite year for the Braves and Phillies. It's not that they didn't have any injuries, but they were definitely blessed with far better health than the Braves were basically all year. They also got some career years from Alec Bohm and Ranger Suarez, and I could kind of see both of those two regressing a little bit next year. So if the luck flips, not that I'm necessarily rooting for the Phillies to get injured, but if the Braves can stay healthy at least, then obviously I do like the Braves' chances better than the Phillies. And just, when you have, the Phillies have honestly had a couple years of really good health in this run that they've had, and it just seems to me that eventually that luck has to run out. All right, so let's get into, like I said, the meat of this episode, guys, and that is the Braves pitching staff. And let's first review what they were able to do in 2024. So, the last 2 episodes I've done regarding the Braves outfield and the Braves infield, pretty negative, right? Because there's a lot of injuries, a lot of underperformance, but it's kind of the opposite for the Braves pitching staff. They really exceeded expectations, especially when you open the year and Spencer Strider goes down, is lost for the year. Man, this group really stepped up. So the Braves 2024 pitching staff, and I'm really talking about the starting staff, was surprising for a few key reasons, right? The 2023 team was all about offense, and they got some good pitching, especially from Strider, but it was really carried by the offense, and that was the expectation going into this year. Of course, you're getting the additions of Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez, but you're still just thinking this team, kind of the offense carries most of the freight, right? And then Strider goes down with his injury in the second start of the year, so now you're thinking that even more. The offense is going to have to carry the load. The Braves, they had to lean on these other starters, though, and they really started to scramble to fill a rotation spot, and really 2 rotation spots, because for a lot of the year, the Braves basically went with a 6-man staff, and they really only had 4 guys that they could count on early in the year. So Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez gave far more than anyone could have expected, and this was one of the big surprises of this season that helped carry the Braves to the postseason. Sale is, of course, likely going to win the Cy Young, and was as good as you could dream after 4 years straight, basically, of injuries. When the Braves acquired Sale, the one thing I definitely remember talking about is that when Sale was on the mound throughout his entire career, if he's on the mound, if he's healthy, he's great. He just hadn't been healthy much. especially over the last few years? Well, he was able to remain healthy throughout the entire regular season, and he was great. His injury leading into the wild card series just stunk. I mean, it was terrible timing. It obviously really hurt, and who knows if the Braves could have got through San Diego if Sale had been healthy and could have matched up in Game 1. But of course, that is not what happened. But nonetheless, he was tremendous in the regular season. Reynaldo Lopez, again, he has re-up this new deal, so he will be with the Braves for the next 3 years for sure. His transition back to being a starter, it was panned by a lot of supposed experts out there. I remember listening to several national podcasts, and they were kind of rolling their eyes at the Braves, like, why are they even trying to do this? And look at this, right? He pitched to a sub-2 ERA, 1.99 ERA in 26 starts, was good for an all-star appearance. He did have to go on the IL 2 times, but very thankfully, it looks like he was able to avoid any kind of serious injury. So he was able to get through that first year coming back from the bullpen, putting a lot more innings on his arm, and he seems to be good to go moving forward. Obviously, the Braves wouldn't have done this new contract with him if they didn't feel totally confident. I'm sure they did did an updated physical and all that to make sure that arm's good. So that's it's good news on that end of things. So the Braves' depth, the pitching depth, was definitely tested nearly to the breaking point, right? To give these two guys extra rest, this 6-man rotation, and really through the middle of the year, it's like, man, how are we going to make it? But it ended up being just enough to help the Braves sneak into the playoffs. But, maybe the biggest surprise of the season was Spencer Schwellenbach and his emergence. So you've got Sale and Lopez. Their level of performance was unexpected. But Schwellenbach's emergence was by far a bigger surprise, coming directly from Double-A into the rotation at just the right time. His name was not on the top of people's list. It was Waldrop. It was Smith-Shawver. Of course, both of those guys go down with injuries, and I'm just thinking, like, where are they going to turn next? I hope it's not Winans or Vines or, the regular, you call them quad A pitchers. But they turned to Spencer Schwellenbach, who I knew his name. I obviously pay attention to the Braves' top prospect list and that sort of thing, but he had just not had much time at all after coming back from Tommy John. He had not had many innings in the minor leagues, and to come in and do what he did was pretty tremendous. Not only did he cover key innings, but down the stretch, he actually might have been the Braves' best starter over September. And, he proved that the Braves have a new young starter that they can rely on, right? This could be a huge thing for the Braves, that he could get slotted in as, your third or fourth starter moving forward. And he might be better than that, right? So his stuff is really good. 6 pitches, maybe more than that. He can basically throw them all, but it's his calm demeanor that might be the best thing about him. He just looks like a really confident pitcher that is unflappable, and that's really awesome to see. So let's compare 2023 and what we got out of those starters compared to 2024. It just gives us a little perspective as to how good the 2024 rotation was. So in 2023, this is just a simple way to do it, right? The top 5 starters, Brave starters, in wins above replacement. So I'm just going to go down this list. It's just one measure, right? But this is a way to look at it. So for 2023, Strider, of course, was a Cy Young candidate. He had a 5.5 WAR season. But the next best pitcher in 2023 for the Braves was Charlie Morton with a 2.7 WAR season. Solid for Charlie. Going down from there, Fried had a 1.9. Remember, Fried was injured for basically half of the year. Elder at 1.8, of course. All of that was by the All-Star break, and we got actually probably negative WAR from that point forward from Elder, but he managed a 1.8 WAR season. And then the 5th best starter in 2023 was Alan Winans, believe it or not, with a 0.5 WAR season. All of this is according to Fangraphs. So that's a total WAR of your 5 best starters of 12.4, and they combined, this group averaged 127 innings per starter. So they weren't able to cover. You're going to remember 2023, it was such a patchwork of who that fifth starter was. It was just a rotating door of a lot of different guys. So in 2024, even with Strider going down, it was just so much more solid as to our starting rotation, innings covered, but also performance. So Chris Sale, of course, led the way in 2024 with a 6.4 WAR season. Reynaldo Lopez was the next at 3.5 WAR. Max Fried at 3.4. Again, Lopez and Fried missed a little bit of time. Maybe they both get a little close to a four WAR season, but nonetheless, great stuff. Schwellenbach, again, in basically just a half a year, 2.6 WAR, which is actually tremendous, right? And then Charlie Morton was the fifth best starter for the Braves at 1.1 WAR. So he definitely took a step back. That's no shock to anybody this year compared to last. But as a group, this was a total WAR of 17. So again, going from your starters contributing 12.4 wins above replacement to a full 17 wins above replacement in 2024. I mean, that's just kind of obviously a wow factor there. And then they also covered a ton more innings. They averaged 156 innings per starter with these five guys. So, I'm not taking a deep dive into the bullpen on this episode, but the bullpen was better in 2024 than it was in 2023, which really should not be surprising to anyone when you just consider how much starters and being able to cover, go deeper into games, cover more innings. The bullpen is just fresher and able to dominate a little bit more. And then, of course, you got great years out of Joe Jimenez and Raisel Iglesias this year in particular. All right, so let's look forward to the 2025 starting rotation. So Chris Sale, Reynaldo Lopez, Spencer Schwellenbach, Spencer Strider, right? You've got four guys in place. But Strider, you kind of have to put a little, parentheses next to his name or a question mark, because you don't know when he's going to be able to start the year. Similar to Ronald in the outfield, when can Strider be fully ready to go? He might be ready to go when spring training breaks, but we don't know. I'm assuming the Braves don't know either. Okay, so you have, four starters, maybe you have 3.75 starters because of what Strider is when he's going to be able to come back. So you basically need two starters in the bank along with these other four guys, in my mind, since you're not sure when Strider can go. Remember, Strider's returning from the brace procedure surgery, not Tommy John. So this might allow him to come back a little sooner and be more effective in this first year back. This is a newer thing. Other pitchers have come back from the brace procedure before. They're not replacing the entire ligament or anything. So it's not quite as big of a thing to come back from, but it is still an unknown. Everybody's different in how they heal and all that stuff. So we just don't know when we're going to get Strider back. There was a recent report from Mark Bowman that is hinting that assumptions that Charlie Morton was going to be retiring at the end of this season may have been a little hasty. It looks like Charlie may want to return for the 2025 season and maybe even pitch through the 2026 season. So this doesn't mean he will definitely be back with the Braves. The Braves, obviously, they're going to have to decide if they want to bring him back. When Morton came to the Braves, a big thing was made of he basically only wanted to pitch for the Braves or the Rays in Tampa Bay just because to be closer to his family. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with this. But Charlie definitely wasn't as good last year as he was the year before. So there was some decline there. Again, he's over 40 at this point. So let's talk about that for a second. Morton might start. It looks like he's showing signs for the first time of true decline. His fastball velocity was down about 1 mile per hour last year compared to 2023. His whiff rate and K percentage were down significantly from 2023. And by the numbers, he's basically become a one-pitch pitcher. His fastball run value is only 8. That means, in the 8th percentile, that's like on the bad side. He does not have a good fastball, meaning it's straight, it gets hit a lot. If you watch Charlie pitch, you notice this. His breaking ball is still elite. It's in the 83rd percentile, but it was in the 99th percentile in 2023. So he went from basically having the best curveball in baseball to having a really good one, but just one that is maybe a little more hittable than it used to be. His barrel rate percentage went from 51% down to 19%, meaning opponents are barreling his pitches at a far higher rate. So he got hurt a lot more this year than he did in 2023. So all that to say, is he not a major league pitcher anymore? No, I think he still can be, but I'm also he might be a little bit more on the edge, right? Of it may be time to hang it up. So if the Braves bring him back on a 1-year deal with a team option for 2026, and those are pretty low, maybe 1 year, $8 million deal with an $8 million option for 2026. I could see them doing something like that. We know that they love Charlie in the clubhouse and that he brings a lot there, and he's proven to be able to cover innings for you, right? And that's basically what you would be doing, bringing him back. But again, they just got a guy in Griffin Canning that's basically that guy and is 28 years old. So it's not that they can't bolster that depth even more by bringing Charlie back, but I'm not sure that solves a heck of a lot. To me, this would allow the Braves to cover, allow Charlie to cover the early starts that maybe Strider misses until Strider comes back healthy. And then if Charlie's pitching well at that point, maybe he stays in the rotation. If he's not pitching well, maybe he goes to the bullpen. He's your long man out of the bullpen, that sort of thing. So if the Braves bring Charlie Morton back, I really view it as covering for Strider, not necessarily filling the full-time fifth starter spot. So I think Canning maybe also fits this role better than a fifth starter spot, but they might like Canning a little more than I think they do. All right, so the biggest question going into the offseason regarding the pitching staff, haven't even talked about it yet, is Max Fried. Is he coming back? Will the Braves bring him back? And the question to me is not if the Braves value Max Fried, and if they would like to bring him back. I think they would love to bring him back. I think the question, as it always is what are other teams willing to pay, and how long of a contract are they willing to give to Max Fried? Remember, Max is 31 going into this offseason. He's a bit of an older free agent in terms of hitting free agency for the first time. So, I think if his market sits at 4 to 5 years and $25 million per year, then I think the Braves might be in the game there, right? They might pursue a reunion with Max at that, right? Can you imagine 5-year, $125 million contract? I think they might do that, or at least be in the negotiations for something like that. But if the market opens up at 6 years, $30 million per year, no, I don't think they're in that game. Even if it's in the 4 or 5 year range, but the market goes up to 30 million per or more, I think they're out. So that's why I think it is unlikely, but we just don't know where the market is for Max yet. The Braves have 2 young controllable starters in Spencer Strider and Spencer Schwellenbach, right? The 2 Spencers, to go along with Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez. They have a few other young starters in the minors that I think they're pretty high on. Waldrop, Smith-Shawver, J.R. Ritchie is looking awesome after coming back from Tommy John. Owen Murphy has underwent Tommy John, so he's a little ways away. Drew Hackenberg has looked really, really good in his first year or so in the Braves organization. So they have some young pitchers. Of course, they're prospects, so they're unproven. But they have some guys in the pike that I think they are pretty encouraged about. And then in terms of free agency, there are a few other older pitchers on the market that they might be interested in for a short-term deal if you kind of assume they don't go after Max Fried. And I like some of these guys like Nathan Eovaldi, Max Scherzer, Walker Buehler. Those 3 guys Not only have they been really good in the past, Eovaldi and, of course, Scherzer are a good bit older than Buehler. Buehler's coming off of Tommy John, but looked really good late in the year and in the playoffs. These guys have tremendous postseason experience, and you could probably get them on shorter term deals, which the Braves particularly like to do. So, there are other options beyond Max Fried. I've seen a couple articles say the Braves have to bring back Max Fried, and would it be awesome to bring him back? Yes, love Max. But I don't know that they have to. There are going to be other options out there if they want to pivot to something else. So no matter what the Braves do this offseason, they should still have one of the best starting rotations in all of baseball, even if they take a step back in 2025 a little bit. And with what should be a rejuvenated offense, I agree that the Braves should absolutely be near the top of baseball projections as likely to win the World Series in 2025, right? We've turned the page from 2024. 2025 is more promising. Ronald Acuna's back. Spencer Strider's back. We can be excited in so many ways about this team, including the pitching staff. So that's what we're looking forward to, and that is definitely something I'm hoping for, that this pitching staff continues to be pretty dominant. So, guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in for another episode of Stay the Braves. I'll talk to you soon.